Greetings, I am LEWIN. Welcome to the Jockey Club Pop-Up Art Park online Roundtable Forum. I am your moderator for today. As you may be aware, in the past few months, there's a large-scale event on mental health. It is a territory-wide campaign, namely Shall We Talk. It has been undergoing. Our ambassador, Mr. Eason Chan, has re-recorded his song Shall We Talk as the theme song for this event. This time, the Jockey Club Pop-Up Arts Park is an event within this Shall We Talk series, and this is part of the event. And apart from Jockey Club, WEIS Foundation is also one of the very important sponsors. Today, this is organized by Hong Kong Arts Centre. Before we start, I would like to say to you and tell you more about the arrangement for today. Today, there are two panel discussions. For these two panel discussions, apart from them, there are 4 artists taking part. One is from the UK, SEMPLE, and also Nimrod from Australia, and also from the US, LEWIN. They will be joining us online. And later on, there is a time during which they will talk about their pieces. And there are Hong Kong artist representatives. Also, my tutoring students from Hong Kong, Ryan Young. So for this online session, you will be able to see on the interface different functions. On the upper right, you will see the function for you to choose language, because this is going to be bilingual. Apart from Cantonese, you can choose English.
Our friends who are speaking English, we have interpretation service on this online webinar, and on right corner you can find a button, and if you choose that button, then you can switch the language between Cantonese and English.
And then at the bottom you can see some buttons, and you can get information about this event. And when we start our panel discussion, you can also submit your questions online. So you can directly have an exchange, an interaction with our guests. So before our artists start their sharing and interaction with us, this time, I'm always saying that there are 4 very important entities. And in order for this event to go smoothly, we have to thank them. Representatives from these 4 entities will do some sharing, and after that, our artists will come forth. Now we have Ms. Connie Lam, Executive Director, Hong Kong Arts Centre, Ms. Leung Chang, Executive Director of Charities and Community, the Hong Kong Jockey Club, Ms. Cecilia Ho, President WEIS Foundation, Mr. Wang Yanlong SC, Chairman Advisory Committee on Mental Health. Now I would like to pass the floor to Connie first. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, good afternoon. I am Connie. I represent Hong Kong Arts Centre. I want to welcome you to be at this Jockey Club Pop-Up Art Park Roundtable discussion. So this is the opening event of the whole forum, and there is going to be artists, cross-sectoral experts, frontline workers, and members of the public. We are here to explore the positive impacts of art on individual and public mental health. First of all, I would also like to welcome artists from mainland China and from overseas. We have from the US, LEWIN, from Australia, Nimrod WEIS of ENESS workshop, and also Stuart SEMPLE from the UK, and also from Hong Kong, Ryan Young. So apart from artists, we have 6 Hong Kong local experts and frontline practitioners to do some sharing with us. In a moment, our artists will share their experience and their creation philosophies. And our guests will talk about mental health and possibilities with art. The Arts Centre was established in 1977. It's the first not-for-profit and non-governmental diversified arts organization. Our mission is to promote the development of contemporary art and culture in Asia, so that Hong Kong will become a cultural metropolis full of art spirit and creativity. And we would like to explore positive impact of art and its impact on society. We will explore relationship between art creation and mental health. Now, for Jockey Club Pop-Up Arts Park, well, it arose because of this spirit. Originally, it is the result of an interaction of public art team and also the interaction with mental health. So we hope to see more interaction. However, when we planned for this event, there is the pandemic everywhere in the world. We face a lot of challenge. As a result, our daily life met a lot of blows, and we experience stress mentally. Recently, because of the pandemic, we have actually put this project online altogether, so that this becomes an online pop-up arts park. And this is really the right time to have this pop-up arts park, so that you can participate online, you can have fun. There is no time and spatial constraints. We hope that this roundtable discussion is only a start. We hope that in the future, our artists, frontline practitioners, and also those concerned about mental health can have more concrete communication, so that we will be able to develop art to a larger extent. Now, this online forum can be successfully organized. We really have to thank our main sponsor, and that is the Hong Kong Jockey Club Charitable Fund, our organizing partner Lee Hai-sin Foundation, and also the full support of the Mental Health Advisory Committee, so that I can also take part in the public education scheme. I need to thank all participating artists, all co-sponsor and supporting organizations for your professionalism, for your creativity and passion. Now let's take art as an entry point, and let's have fun, relax, and pick up some pleasure. Thank you. Good afternoon. On behalf of Jockey Club Charitable Fund, I'm here to welcome you to this roundtable discussion. Based on WHO, without mental health, there is no real health. However, according to Hong Kong Mental Health Index 2020 survey, public mental health average index had seen the record low. So we cannot overlook this situation. So for our charitable fund, we support the Arts Center together with Mental Health Advisory Committee to organize the Jockey Club Pop-Up Arts Park, so that some art pieces with technological elements can be showcased to the public. Since there is the unprecedented challenge from the pandemic, we have to be flexible. Originally, it's a physical playground. Now it is online. So artists, art therapists, and also parenting organizations will lead you to play and relax, so that members of the public can explore themselves, release their emotions through play, and mental health can be enhanced. And later on, there will be some educational outreach activities, enhancing people's understanding and awareness about mental health. We encourage the needy people to seek help as soon as possible. And we would like to see more social inclusion. During the pandemic, Hong Kong people feel very stressed, and this project can offer some breathing gap for the public. Today, we are having this roundtable forum so that there is a platform for us to explore together how we can combine art and mental health. And under the new normal, how can we develop various possibilities? We are one of the top 10 charitable organizations in the world, and we have been working towards promoting community mental health. We have been giving support to various related projects, and we have been taking care of needs of different age groups. In 2016, we pioneered the Jockey Club Elderly Scheme, and in 2028, we supported the setting up of the Open Up online platform, offering emotional support to young people. Last year, we took the initiative to implement the Level Mind at JC. We want to enhance overall mental health of people and help young people to enhance their own self-awareness. So through our diversified mode of operation, we're able to contribute to society with our tax revenue as well as donations arising from income from horse racing and lottery. Finally, on behalf of the Jockey Club, I would like to thank the government for their support, and thank you Hong Kong Arts Centre and all supporting and co-organizing entities. Thank you. Good afternoon, I'm Cecilia. I'm representing Lee-Hyson Foundation. I'm happy to be at this roundtable forum. So this is really the start of the Jockey Club Pop-Up Arts Park. During a long period of preparation, we are happy to see 4 artists and 6 scholars and also frontline workers from welfare sector to gather together for some exchange. During this pandemic, I think people feel very stressed mentally, and there is anti-epidemic fatigue. While we are adapting to the new normal, we are so happy to work with the Jockey Club Charitable Foundation, the Mental Health Advisory Committee, the Hong Kong Arts Centre, to bring this very special event to you all. We want to give you some positive energy. At the same time, we want to cheer you up. Physical health is important. However, we cannot neglect our own and our friends, our families' emotional and mental health. Lee-Hyson Foundation is deeply rooted in Hong Kong. We have a history of 40 years. Over the past years, we focus on supporting some influential and impactful, meaningful projects in Hong Kong. We are in the areas of education, social welfare, healthcare, and art. For art, we do think that it is very powerful in curing people's mind and spirit. So this time we are bringing art to the communities, hoping more people can experience. Regarding mental health, within this year, we have supported a number of different projects. Beneficiaries include children and elders, caregivers, parents, social workers, and ethnic minorities and low-income family groups. For this event, Jockey Club Pop-Up Arts, from local and overseas arena, we have brought in 4 groups of art pieces. So a family or some friends or strangers can actually appreciate the art pieces together. We hope that all these works can change the established ideas about art, and we can enhance interpersonal communication and leave some breathing gap during the stressful pandemic. Now, during this pandemic, we cannot physically go to playground. However, last week, we organized some online events for people to have a taste of the games. So people found those very enjoyable. In the future, we will organize more similar events so that you can feel the magic of art. Finally, I have to thank the team in Hong Kong Arts Centre for riding out all the difficulties and for successfully organizing the event. Lee-Hyson Foundation is happy to work with similar-minded organizations. In the future, we promise to work together with more organizations and gather together social resources and promote mental health together. I wish you all good health physically and mentally. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here at this event, Jockey Club Pop-Up Arts Online Opening Ceremony. I need to thank the Jockey Club Charitable Foundation and Lee-Hyson Foundation. All along, they have shown a lot of concern for mental health, and they support this very meaningful mental health promotion event. Because of the pandemic, we cannot physically be present, However, through the online platform, I hope that we can all share the fun of the pop-up arts park. In the past 10 odd months, because of the ups and downs in the pandemic, we face fear and anxiety, and we have been in a highly vigilant stage over a long period of time, and we need to keep social distancing. So we feel anti-epidemic fatigue, and we really are exhausted. Under the pandemic, the mental health index was the lowest in the past 9 years. So that's because of the pandemic. Because of this, the Arts Center has organized this pop-up arts park, and they have prepared a series of art events. We hope that through these events, we can release our emotions. Because of the pandemic, we cannot be taking part physically, but I hope that through these online events, we can develop mental and physical health. Now, this time, the pop-up arts park is part of Shall We Talk? And for Shall We Talk, actually in July, starting July this year, the Mental Health Advisory Committee had organized a series of public education events, including Shall We Talk? We hope to arouse people's attention about mental health. Apart from their own friends and family members, they should also take good care of their own mental health. Now, if you realize that your own mental health or people around you have mental health problem or have emotional disturbance, please talk to each other and pay attention to those around you. Please also stay tuned to the online events that will be launched soon. While you are enjoying the fun of art, you can also release your pent-up emotions and face squarely to this issue and develop your mental and physical health. Please encourage those around you to take part together. Finally, I wish the Jockey Club Pop-Up Arts Park every success, and I wish you both mental and physical health. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nimrod. Thank you for inviting us to this wonderful exhibition from the Hong Kong Arts Centre, the Pop-Up Art Park. We create work that is interactive, that encourages people to play in new ways in our public space. I always like to show this picture of myself and my business partner, who we met when we were 9 years old, and we made things all the time. We like to think of it as hacking new ways to joy. I also thought of sharing with you guys this early work from 2006 where we were projecting onto large spheres that came to life. And why I thought to do that was because I received a hug from a stranger just by standing around and having a conversation about what we were experiencing in space. And that's when I kind of thought, hang on, this work has something else going on where people can, because they're seeing something for the first time, there are new conversations and new interactions formed. And I thought that was a really interesting aspect to the work, where it was not so much about the work, but the engagement that we have with one another, which led us to form many wonderful installations all over the world, creating memorable shared experiences in our cities. This is another example of the type of work that brings people together to form something new and something special. It's called Mobius. It's a giant animation that happens in real time, where we got the audience, the public, to help us move these pieces in order to form this animation, so they were part of the process. And from that, again, we met a lot of people and had a wonderful time together, building this thing together as a community in our public space. So from working together to form new experiences, here we're gathering, we're sharing a seat with strangers or friends. This occurs every night at GEM in South Bank in Brisbane, where people share a space and they're interacting with a sculpture that responds with light and sound. So depending on where they are in the space, when they walk in, GEM greets them with sound. One of the interesting aspects to this work is that we generally have a perceived way that we interact in our public space. So we might be in a park, on a park bench, or in a playground. This work kind of provides a new type of experience in public space where, because we're not familiar with that type of thing in this kind of space, we tend to lose any inhibitions that we may have and kind of explore new ways of engaging and behaving in public space. And that's a really interesting outcome from this type of work. I'll share with you a short video that shows off what Jeremy's all about. Sonic light bubble, it's touchable, it's like a giant stress ball. I've seen people squish it, hug it, and even pre-pandemic kiss it, quite literally. And that again just frees people up to be in the moment, joyful, happy, and have those really interesting conversations with one another. This work we've toured all over the world, which has just been such a amazing experience to see this travel from Asia to Europe to the US, and see how different cultures explore and interact with this work is also another interesting aspect where cultures, different cultures are behaving and interacting in different ways. I love this picture here where you actually see the security guard also curious and wanting to know more and having a play himself whilst on duty, minding the light bubble. Onto another work we call Airship Orchestra, which we showed earlier this year, just before the pandemic as well. We happened to show this in Shanghai as the news broke out. And we took this giant inflatable orchestra in a freezing climate, both in Washington and then Shanghai a few weeks after. And it's interesting to watch this work, again, a very unfamiliar environment, to bring that into our city and how people can, you know, when they see something as surreal as this airship orchestra, they then start to behave and interact and explore things in a different way. I'll just share a video with you to describe it. Okay. Which brings me to the work that we're presenting here in Hong Kong. It's the light seesaw. I like to look at it as art and play combined. There's a certain curiosity when you turn something that we're familiar with to something otherworldly or strange. And that's what the light seesaw does. It encourages not just the young to play, but the old as well. So most of us have probably forgotten what it's like to swing on a swing or slide on a slide. And this work encourages us to do that, to explore our childlike, you know, ways. And I guarantee you, once you get on the seesaw, it's like being a kid again. The inertia that happens when you're soaring up and down with your friends or even strangers is just a wonderful experience to share. The first time we showed this work was actually now 10 years ago. So it's just amazing how this type of interaction and classic toy can resonate, you know, throughout the years. And we're really excited to see how the people of Hong Kong use it and enjoy it. On to another project, which is a little bit different, but also deals with our emotions and our well-being. This is a work that we created a number of years back at a children's ward in a hospital. Usually, you know, when kids walk into a hospital, they might be fearful of, you know, walking to a hospital, and there's anxiety there. What we did was we took ordinary walls and we brought them to life. So we turned them into giant screens of animation. So these walls literally talk. From hospitals to aged care centres where the residents can play with interactive walls, and these walls allow them to exercise their minds in different ways. And that's a really exciting area that we're so proud and passionate about exploring into the future. So during lockdown, we created a new work that's called Sky Castle. And it's going to be touring globally as well as Hong Kong in the near future. And the principle of this work is that after every storm there is a rainbow. And sure enough, you'll be able to walk through and create melodies and light as you explore this new work. I can't wait to bring it to you all very soon. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Stuart here. It's really wonderful to be with you all today. Again, thank you so much for all the hard work everyone's put into making this happen. I think it's absolutely brilliant that we're coming together to discuss ideas about art and community and mental health, particularly at a time like this. Obviously, it's impossible to forget we're at an unprecedented time, a very strange moment for humanity, both in the arts and just individually. And what I need to tell you is I'm here in the UK, and the single biggest killer of young men in my country here is actually male suicide. So you could say that the mental health crisis in this country is at an epidemic level. And unfortunately, due to COVID and the restrictions and the lockdowns that we're facing, that rate of male suicide has grown. So there's no more timely moment for us to be having this conversation. It is so relevant right here and right now to see, as artists, as curators, as audiences, as human beings, can the arts and public art, in fact, have an impact or a role to play in our mental wellness? And actually, how can that impact us as a society? So my plan today, we don't have very long together, so I'm going to go through a few things I've made, a few things I've seen, some things I've found out, and I hope to leave you at the end with some really firm takeaways, some really strong stuff that you can actually apply either in your own work, or when you interact with work, or when you're thinking about programming things or making stuff, or even that you can just take on as a human being that lives your everyday life. Actually, how can the arts or creative expression help you feel better? Because we often talk about mental health in a way that almost stigmatizes the subject, right? So when I say mental health, we instantly conjure pictures of desperate moments, or people who are suffering, or people who are having problems. And when we talk about physical health, we think of people exercising at the gym and eating well, and we think about health. So I'm going to very deliberately today be talking about mental wellness to avoid those sort of stigmatizing kind of words. I think it's really important. I think words are very, very powerful. So I'm going to talk about mental wellness and things that we can do to improve or help our mental wellness, and how I think art can help. A few caveats really. First of all, it's my experience. I can't tell about how anybody else feels, what other people are going through. I'm certainly not a doctor or a psychologist. I'm an artist. So I can't really give specific kind of advice on how to deal with stuff. But these are the things I've seen, these are the things I've made, and I can tell you why I made them. First of all, I think it's really important to understand why I started making the work I made, and how I started to realise that art can have an impact in how we feel. So I grew up in a very small seaside town in Bournemouth in England on the south coast, where there was basically no art, but I went to a Catholic school. So the thing with the Catholic school was that people would stand in front of these artworks, these paintings, these sculptures, and they appeared to have an emotional or an emotive reaction to them. And it resonated in my mind that actually, in some way, art and the arts were important. They're important to how people felt, how people moved, how they related to one another. There was a community aspect to it. So I saw a community coming together around the artworks, and I thought that was really, really important. I didn't really fit in. I was a bit of a strange, geeky, odd, weird kid. So I spent my time at home in my bedroom, and my solace, the thing that didn't make me feel so alone, was art books. I devoured books on Van Gogh and the Impressionists, and music videos and things like that. So the arts had a huge role in my life growing up. And then when I got to 19 years old, and this is crucially important as to understanding some of the later works I made, I nearly died from an allergic reaction. So I came home from art school to visit my mum. I'd eaten something on the way, and I literally flopped on her doorstep, dying. And they took me to hospital, and they did everything they normally do when you have an allergy, but it didn't work. And one night, they told me it was time to sort of say goodbye to my family and everything, and I did that. And they gave me a drip of this blood stuff from another hospital, and I reacted badly to it. I had an allergic reaction to that, and I completely flatlined. And in that moment, and it sounds like a cliche, I looked for something to reach to. If I live, what will I do? And it was art. Art was the thing. If I live, I'm going to make art. That's the point. So art literally gave me a reason to live and sort of saved my life. After that, I had a huge anxiety disorder, where I'd have multiple panic attacks every day. I couldn't really leave my house, couldn't really leave my room, but I made art as a way of coping, as a mechanism to get through and externalise what I was feeling. Sometimes we can't do it with words. You know, we find that men find it particularly hard to emote through words. So when we can create, when we can make, when we can express ourselves like that, it can have a profoundly healing effect, and it did. I spent 3 years making works and sharing them on the internet, and I realised I wasn't alone in what I was feeling and experiencing, and I actually found a global community, and it was really, really, really beautiful. And I carried on doing that, and I did art shows, and I made paintings and all the rest of it, and that was brilliant. But I realised something was missing when my great-grandmother got diagnosed with late-onset schizophrenia. And I reached out to the mental health charity Mind, and I started talking to them. And it actually led me to becoming an ambassador for Mind here in the UK. And we actually set up creative therapies funds throughout the UK to connect people who are struggling with their mental wellness with the arts. So that might be script writing, dancing, playing, making art. And I can tell you anecdotally, those people that go to the Hackney Choir or paint in a group like that come up to me, and they grab me and they hug me, at least they did before the pandemic, and they tell me it's completely changed their life, because having a creative expression for the self actually opens a doorway that's there forever. And it's quite miraculous. We're finding these people going back to their doctors and their GPs, and they're halving their medication in a lot of cases. It's literally transforming their lives. Why? Because we need to express ourselves. We're not like other animals. We have an emotive, expressive element to who we are and what we do. So that's why creativity helps. Anyway, I was doing this, I was making these paintings, I'd set up the Creative Therapies Fund, and then a huge recession hit. We're talking about the 2008 recession. Everything was wiped out, and I wanted to do something about it. I believed art could. I was waiting for all the big artists to do something and say something, and they didn't. So I turned up at the Tate, and we let off the happy clouds for the first time. And you're seeing those in Hong Kong right now in the park, and the happy clouds rose into the sky. People looked at them, and I couldn't believe the reaction. I was not expecting to have made a work that connected so universally, like people absolutely understood. And I was so lucky that day because the wind was blowing the clouds towards the financial district. And it couldn't have been a more visual allegory of what was going on. These happy clouds coming out of our museum, which was only 10 years old, and blowing towards the financial district. And I literally saw people walking over Millennium Bridge really, really down, really down. I mean, people losing their houses, it was brutal. And these clouds were literally almost hitting them in the face, and they were smiling, and I saw them melt. And I understood at that point that art isn't an object. It isn't a thing. You don't need to be able to hold it, own it, buy it, or possess it. Art is an experience that we as human beings have when we engage with something another person has made, right? So after that, I decided what I wanted to do was to commit myself to instigating spaces for these experiences to happen. And the Happy Clouds was one that's now been repeated all over the world. And I'm so happy it's finally made it to Hong Kong. I'm so happy that you guys have that work. Because it's something that I think is really beautiful. And what I like about it is it's not complete, right? The audience bring the other half of the story to the work. And I think good art should do that. It should be audience focused. So I continued after that to make several other pieces. Jump for the City of Melbourne, where I wanted to bring strangers together in a physical environment to jump. I made a giant bouncy castle, and what we saw is that adults were apprehensive and they didn't understand, but once they jumped together, play ensued and beautiful things came out of that installation. But the biggest thing I've made in this, and the thing I want to share with you most, is what I made in Denver. I made a project called Happy City. I was very inspired by a book by Charles Montgomery, and he's a researcher and a social scientist, a journalist that has done a lot of social studies around happiness and cities and well-being in populations. And for Denver, I worked with the city to make a series of radical interventions. One of them was an emotional baggage drop that we installed right inside the main train station, because we know that the morning commute is the most stressful part of someone's day. So I wanted to put an emotional baggage drop in the train station. What that did was two strangers entered from different doors. They never saw each other. There was a screen between them and a little eye hole, and they shared a burden with each other privately, and then they left. And that was the emotional baggage drop. And Charles, luckily, and his whole research think tank came over from Canada and did a piece of research around the baggage drop, which was phenomenal. And they did a couple of other social studies there too. And I wanted to share with you the results, and you can see these on the happycity.com website, Charles's website. But basically, he also did a study around the link between transport and how generous people were. They stopped people in the street, gave them $10 to take part in a survey. This is in Denver while my project was going on. And they asked them at the end of the survey if they wanted to donate the $10 back to the mental health charity in Denver. And 6.7% of them did. Most of them did. They were really generous. But then they looked at modes of transport. Were the bike riders or the pedestrians or the car drivers the most generous? And they found that the cyclists were the most generous, pedestrians second, and actually the drivers third. So we know when we design cities, if people move by bike, they're likely to be happier and more generous. So that's really interesting. He also found out through the emotional baggage drop, they did a survey of people at the end. Those that took part in the emotional baggage drop were more likely to be optimistic about the future and had a more positive outlook. So what we know is when you share things with a stranger, you're more likely to have a more positive and open outlook on life. That's what we found from the emotional baggage drop, which was absolutely brilliant. So I was so happy because I knew art installations and public art could help with things like social isolation and how we feel. And we proved it worked. So we're hopefully seeing that in this project in the park with all the amazing work that's been made. And I imagine it will help with wellness directly, like it is a medicine. Now, I just wanted to leave you, we're running out of time. I could talk about 1,000,001 pieces of work that I've made, and I'm sure we'll open up the discussion in a minute. You can Google the things I've made. There's a little documentary on Amazon called Mr. Happy where you can see a bit more about what we did in Denver specifically. But I just wanted to leave you a few really strong takeaways that you can really use every day. So the first one is you have a mind, we all do, and we want to look after it. We eat 5 fruit and vegetables a day, we go to the gym for our body. What do we do for our mind, and how can creativity help? You need to do it. You need to express yourself somehow. Find whatever mechanism. Couple of tips. Set a clock every morning. Draw for 2 minutes, whatever comes into your head, or write for 2 minutes non-stop everything that comes into your head. That creative practice can be done in 2 minutes a day. I know most of you won't believe me or take it on board, but for those of you who do, I promise it will have a radical impact on what you make. Those of you who are artists, please consider your work as a social work. Consider the audience. Understand how you enrich and value the audience around you, and try and make work that instigates well-being if you can. Of course, you don't have to, But I think that artists more than ever have a moral obligation to be making work that benefits society. At least that's what I want to spend my life doing, and I guarantee it's a very rewarding thing. Those of you who look at art, really engage with it, dig deeply, look at the emotions you feel when confronted with art, get to know yourself through the art. It's what us artists want. Please dive into the experience fully and deeply. Don't just take it on the surface. Go right in. And for those of you who program art, commission art, and make art, please support artists who are making work that are trying to contribute things that push society and culture forward and connect people. And really, ultimately, when we do put work out into the world, we need to be asking the deep question, is this making things better or worse? And take some responsibility for what we're putting out. So they're the things that I've sort of noticed. I've been making the public arts, as I say, because I think they work. I hope to make a lot more of them. And I love learning about other artists that work in these ways. So if you've got any questions later, I'm sure we'll all discuss it, and it'll be really good. And I hope you enjoy seeing those few pieces that I shared. You can always email me or find me on social as well if you've got any other questions. I'd love to talk. Okay.
唔該晒啊 Nimrod 同埋。Both of you are run from Stuart. You're in London, are you?
I'm in the UK. I'm on the south coast of England, very near London, but by the beach.
And Nimrod is also online. Hello, Nimrod.
Yes, hi there.
Hi. Good to have you both. And we have a few more speakers. So I will switch back. And so you have the English interpretation with you. So 我亦都可以介紹。
Now I'm going to talk about this session. There are 3 other speakers. 2 of them are now in the shooting venue. I cannot go because I'm still in the quarantine period. So very soon I can be released. So this topic is very suitable for me. The 3 respondents with us today are Grace Chang, Ms. Grace Chang, Director of Art in Hospital and Community Art Network. Grace, hello. And the second one is Francis Yiu, Supervisor of Tonghua Group of Hospitals, Loching Community Mental Health Education and Promotion Service Center. And the third one is Dr. Stephanie Lee on Zoom, Associate Head of Division of Social Sciences, Humanities and Design at College of Professional and Continuing Education, Polytechnic U. Hi, 3 of you. Before I talk to the 2 artists, can the 3 of you give some comments on what Nimrod and Stuart just said, their pieces made for Hong Kong, and what they said just now? Perhaps I will ask Grace to start first. Okay, can you hear me clearly? Yes. Nim and Stuart, hi. I really like your artworks. And for Nim, just now I saw a lot of very interactive things. The part I like most is that different strangers, through this art piece, can build connections with one another. In your work, I think this is the most important part. I want to know more. Now, from your work, I can see a lot of interaction. And I don't know whether there are records of the interaction and whether you have seen some interesting phenomena. And just now I saw Stuart. I really like his outfit. And when I listened to Stuart just now, the blackboard behind Stuart, well, I can see a lot of words written on that blackboard. Just now, Stuart said that he would like to bring happiness to people. He gave us some takeaways. He said perhaps we can spend 2 minutes every day to draw and to write something. Stuart, Can you share with us how you implement this and how you look at the relationship with society? Can he do more sharing? Well, perhaps later on we can ask them to speak. Francis, can you give some comments first? Based on the keynote presentations they made just now, can you hear me clearly? Yes. Both artists are very innovative. I really appreciate their work. And there is a point in common. The first one is they attach a lot of importance to interaction and the use, so people can take part in them. This is a good point. Secondly, they have actually integrated art into life. So, for example, in a certain piazza, a huge light sphere was made, and members of the public can rest and relax. So they are just around you. So that means art can integrate our living, our clothing, our mobility, and our living. For Stuart, I like his work. So there is a room, and then the emotional element is excellent. He is not only innovative, he actually sees the need. Now, in the UK, perhaps the suicide rate is very high, and there is a strong sense of isolation. People become depressed, and they are emotionally stuck. And so he has created that piece to break through social isolation. So he made that in a train station for people to experience. So I think it is very close to us. I do agree with him that art is not only an object, but it is also an experience. I do think that art can help solve social problems and mental health problems. Stephanie? Let me comment from psychology's point of view. Now, when it comes to the artwork, I think they are all very interactive. So when you place artwork on a park, well, they are for appreciation, but it seems that their artwork is actually a shared activity. It is full of fun. It can bring happiness to people. And there are some images or pictures that when passers-by see those pieces, they show very happy reactions. Those reactions are not pretended acts. They are real. In the world of adults, very often people are pretensive. However, we can see that those art pieces attract attention because they look very nice and they are eye-catching. And now we are all on social media. People always take pictures and post them. And in turn, there will be even more connection. So they can generate conversations. And on the site, you can see people gathering together to have a conversation. Those people may or may not know one another. I think this is relevant in Hong Kong because in other countries, if you see some passers-by, there may be some small talks among them. But in Hong Kong, this will not usually happen. So there is the need for some art pieces to gather together people to have conversations. Stuart said that we need to have dreams and something to look forward to. We need to have hope. And art enables him to have hope so that he can continue to live. This is important. A renowned person said that in life, if we do not have ideals or dreams, then we are like dried fish. So I think this is very important. Let me tell you what I like best. Well, of course, both artworks are very good. For Nimrod's piece, the sonic light bubble, well, you can embrace it when you are unhappy. If you can embrace something, or if someone pat you on your shoulder, it is better than talking for 1 hour because you can feel social support. You can feel love and care from another person. So it is really well designed. Well, it looks nice. At the same time, there is sound, there is image, and then you can take pictures to post, and you can embrace it. For the light seesaw, well, you all of a sudden will become like children. Well, when did you put up a genuine smile? And when did you really have fun and play? But then with the seesaw, you turn into a child, and you will realize that happiness is very simple. And then the work is cute as T-shirt. I think he has experienced unhappiness, so that's why he has a bigger urge to make other people happy. So the projections on people's faces, well, at that time, during the financial tsunami, people were very, very unhappy, especially those working in the banking sector. And all of a sudden, people could become happy. So happiness is that simple. Thank you, Stephanie.
So Grace has two questions for you, and Grace is asking Nimrod if you have do any kind of record of how the audience interact with your pieces. So can you say something on this?
Yeah, I wish I could record more of the conversations and the interactions that happen at our exhibitions. It's one of the reasons why I really enjoy spending time at them myself, just to see how people engage and find those moments, those special moments that occur in public space. Sometimes we have I guess, testimonials, or as soon as you kind of intrude with the camera, I think the behavior tends to change. So it's always hard to capture those really special moments when you do kind of, come in with the camera and ask those questions. So it's always hard to record those special moments that occur between people, in public space. So, but I do enjoy personally spending a lot of time at the installations in public squares if I can, and to watch those and learn from those interactions how we can bring more of that into our cities.
Okay, for Nimrod, Grace also raised another question. How do you execute the 2 minutes exercise for yourself, and how long have you been doing this?
Sorry.
The 2 minutes drawing and writing exercise.
Yeah, actually, I've been doing it for about 20 years. And I think with all of these things, it's a case of making them a habit, So I actually get up in the morning, make a drink, and then just doodle for 2 minutes. And it just seems to do me so much good just to get everything out before I start my day. And it's as simple as that. I mean, you just do it. In fact, you stop not doing it. A lot of people spend a lot of time not doing things. Park the not doing it, and you'll find you're doing it.
Thank you.
Back to Cantonese. Grace and Francis, during this time, can you talk to us? In Hong Kong, you are doing a lot of art therapy, and you use art on the mentally ill recovered patients. So I would like to talk to you during the process. You see different types of creation process. So what is the specific function on the mentally rehabilitated people? Well, just now, after listening to Nim and Stuart and after seeing their work, there is a big point in common. Art has big therapeutic or self-healing function. I do believe that art has therapeutic power, and this power can lead to more positive view of life. So what do we do most in art? Together with artists, we go to hospitals and we meet patients, their family workers, medical professionals, and so on. We bring art to them, and through their own participation, art can bring about positive power to them. So with artists, we go to hospitals, we start from zero. Well, people at first don't know what we are doing, so we will start from a creation. And sometimes we will paint a very beautiful wall for a hospital. patients have gone through a lot of therapies and they may have much anxiety. So during the creation process, the anxiety may disappear. So this is what we have seen most. I want to share a story. There are 3 ladies who have already retired. They have different mental needs. And when they are in the recovery process, we did artistic creation with them together. At the beginning, they knew nothing about painting. And after 2 to 3 years, they shared about the merit of drawing. And they said, painting is happy. And one lady said, at the beginning, when my husband saw my paintings, he said that they're ugly. And now he said that they look nice. And the pictures can be hung at home, or they can be sent as gifts to friends. So through art creation, they have received a lot of condolence and also connection with family members. So I think that's the point that I would like to make. Francis, what you are doing is slightly different from our discussion. Apart from visual art, I know that you make use of drama theater to help those with mental needs, and you conduct exercises with them. So can you tell us the difference between a theater and visual art? Theater is expressive art. I think there are similarities between the two. So we use a certain format to express our inner heart, and we want to help people to be aware of themselves. And through drama, people will see more possibilities. In our center, there is a lot of mental health promotion, and formats include both online and physical events. Our targets are members of the public and also some recovered mental patients. We have been doing this for 10 years. We invite them and some secondary students to perform together in a drama. Now, the recovered patients have their stories. We will extract elements from their stories to form the script. And so, in other words, they are acting out their stories. In this way, we can also remove stigmatization. So they are performing in a drama on a theater, on a stage, and they are no different from other people. I remember one episode. There is a woman with anxiety. She has very bad relationship with his son. Now, for depression, well, usually the patient has undergone a lot of loss, and in the drama, she can express herself, and the director enables her to jam with another youngster in that drama, and she sort of can tell her story. So the young person actually embraced her in the performance. This is ad hoc. This is not part of the script. And at the end, she invited her son to watch her performance. Well, this is not really very dramatic. However, it's like an ice breaking. She can discover many possibilities in the drama. She feels safe. Actually, many faked things are actually very real. A lot of elements in drama are part of life. So I think drama can enable people to realize a lot of possibilities. Some time ago, I had the opportunity to talk to Grace, Stephanie, and Francis. And I think we all understand the fun of art. For the recovered patients or persons, it's difficult for them to express themselves. And art is a very effective medium for them to express their needs, their emotions, and some real messages. Stephanie, art as a medium in mental health can play a very important role. Well, actually, you have made all the points in my mind. Concerning the campaign Shall We Talk? And if you have watched the video of Mr. Wang Yanlong, you can see people making paintings together. After drawing, they explain what that drawing represents. I think this is a convenient tool or vehicle to help them express their emotions, because normal persons who are not that psychologically minded may only know that they are unhappy.
But how are you unhappy? Are you angry or what? People don't know how to express themselves, but the picture help them express themselves. If you ask the patients to draw, perhaps they're not as confident in the beginning, because when you ask people to draw, Hong Kong people will say, I don't know how to do it. I don't want to draw. Because Hong Kong people pay a lot of emphasis on whether they can or cannot, whether they are successful or whether they fail. But sometimes we don't have to do that. We don't have to be over serious, otherwise we lose. But this actually gives people a purpose. There is no right or wrong. It's just a sense of achievement, which builds on the person's confidence. For mental health rehabilitating people, it is often that they've lost their work and they don't feel good about themselves, and their self-confidence may be low. So this is a means for them to express themselves, which builds self-confidence. And also, a picture paints 1,000 words. We have that saying. So this is about expressing their own feelings. And also in Wang Yanlong, you saw example, you saw that they were working on a painting together. And this is therapy. And also it is an activity which will allow people to connect, to have a community with friends, and people can go through something together with peers so that the person would feel easier, and also the subjective experience would be better, and they will be able to recover faster, these people with mental health rehabilitation situation. Now, you've told me, and I now know that through drawing and painting, we can allow for oneself to express oneself, and it is purposeful, and we are happier, as mentioned just now. This really makes us happier. We just don't know. It just makes people happier, and that is good.
Question for Nimrod and Stuart. In UK and also in Australia, so in today we are discussing how do we apply art in some kind of like a mental therapy, or how to help people who have some demand on mental well-being. In Australia and in UK, or in your own creative journey, so how much are you taking this into account of, you know, use your piece as a vehicle or a message to help those people who have mental need? Stuart, can you share with us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, here in the UK, Here in the UK, I set up the Creative Therapies Fund with Mind, and we actually support people to connect to creativity in therapeutic environments. So they might be singing, they might be dancing, they might be creating art. And exactly what Steph said, actually, we see remarkable transformations when people can express themselves through these things. And it's quite well established here. It's been going for about 10 years now. Initially, when I started to talk about this, it seemed it was crazy to people. They thought, how can art actually help people feel better? And I fought for a long time, and now it's very normal, actually, which is beautiful to see. There's been a real cultural shift. And then wider than that, in my work, I actually really believe that the arts, in general, the arts, theatre, whatever, the broad remit of the arts, have a huge role to play in shifting the dial on culture in general. If you think back even to the 60s, if it wasn't for rock and roll music and fashion, we probably wouldn't even have teenagers. So I think it's possible to ask the question, how can arts push the dial on culture in a direction where we want to go, where our emotions are catered for, where we connect with one another compassionately, where we're supportive, where we're loved, where we feel nurtured? And actually, when people come together to make art in a group, as Steph said, we see amazing things. And this is the power of something like a choir, or drawing or painting as a community. Actually, we're not the only one that feels like this. It's not just me. These other people experience similar things, and we have the same relationship. Also, we don't always need to use our mouth to explain how we feel. When we have a creative vehicle that isn't speaking, we see radical, very powerful transformations in people.
Thank you, thank you, Stuart. What about the case in Australia, in Nimrod? What about your experience in Australia of combining this art creation thing with mental well-being?
Yeah, look, I could only speak from my own experience, I guess, with the work that we do and see how it genuinely does affect people. Some of the work that I showed briefly, the work that we've done in aged care, for instance, where we create these walls that allow the patrons there who live in the space to interact with the imagery and the playfulness that comes out of that wall, and then also how they interact with one another, as in utilising this wall in a physical sense. So it is a new paradigm, I guess. It's a new form of art that we're creating, that we're exploring, and it definitely has aspects that can enrich and enhance people's life. I guess it also relates to the way in which we make the work. We're really passionate and have a lot of fun with the type of work that we create, and that fun then it is infused in the work itself, and that comes out as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Nimrod. Thank you, Stuart. 另一個問題咧，我諗我哋頭先講咗。
Here's another question. We've talked about art being a tool, a medium to help those who have some need to connect, to express themselves, and for them to be able to confirm themselves, to raise their self-confidence. And another aspect in terms of mental health is in stigmatization or destigmatization. How can we do that better? Talking with Grace and Francis earlier, we've talked about this. For those who are in rehabilitation, for them to be creative is actually helpful for destigmatization. Grace, perhaps you can share with us some of your experience, and that is for these people when they go into the creative mode. How do they connect and communicate with those who are not in rehabilitation so that these so-called normal people can understand their process more? Well, in this topic, there's something that's very important. Of course, destigmatization is our ultimate objective, but also important is that how we can allow those in rehabilitation
we have
to
interpretation
build up their self-confidence and self-trust. And when they can do that, they would want to share.
And if you choose that button, then you can switch the
Stuart
language
talked
between
about one thing
Cantonese
just
and
now.
English.
When we talk about choirs or popular music, that's exactly so. And that is, upon interacting with art, upon being exposed to art, they become more courageous in facing up to their present situation. Just like the people we serve. For instance, when we use art to share with them, and then they make their own drawing and they hide it until the time they have made a drawing and they're willing to share their drawing and talk about their drawing, what they're drawing. That process in itself is an empowering process. And when they feel empowered, then they will start understanding how they can connect and communicate with the so-called normal people, their friends and their families. So for this part, this is exactly how art can empower them and help them face up to their situations. What is important, of course, is that we have peer group influence and we partner them, be by their side. It is important that we're willing to support. Francis? Yes, as for our service, we also look into a lot of suspected cases or some public figures, very often the biggest difficulty is to have them be aware that they actually have some emotional difficulties. For example, if you have a station by the side of the road and you say this is for emotional health testing, I'm sure no one will come over, because especially in Hong Kong, there's still a lot of stigmatization despite the work. And art is an excellent way for engagement. We actually have a mobile publicity van, which is mobile in the Kowloon area, and we really set up street stations, and we have art experience, attracting people to come onto the van to do some artwork, to do some crayon painting, etc. And then we see something in their artwork, and in that process, actually, we have lowered their defense mechanism, and they're willing to share how they understand their own work and why I draw it this way. And that is the thin edge of the wedge, so that they are willing to open up and talk about their own emotions. And then they would also be aware that this drawing of theirs actually represents how they feel at the moment. And then after that, they may be open to do some testing, assessment, and maybe counseling. So art is an excellent bridge. That's our first point. And also, our service actually basically serve the children, young people most. And sometimes their family members are suffering mentally. And for the young, it's very difficult for them to express themselves. They don't even have the vocabulary to do so. So how can they do so? Some of them bite their nail and pull their hair. And so sometimes we allow them to express themselves through painting, through art, not just for us, but also for their parents to understand what state they're in. So art really is helpful for them to connect up with people around them and also to the professionals who can help them. Now, from an academic point of view, art and stigma, this issue, how do you understand this from an academic viewpoint so that we can be successful in the destigmatization? I think our culture all the more promotes stigmatization. Well, overseas, perhaps it's less so, but our character, personality is such that we want to hide. We stigmatize ourselves. Apart from stigmatizing people, if I suffer from mental illness, I don't want to tell people. But if using art, it becomes a kind of soft sell, as a panelist said, Francis talked about. For if you set up a mental health testing station, no one would come over, because what if they test positive? People are very mindful how people look at them. But for art, it seems trendy, it seems acceptable, and people would not be as suspicious of it. And another thing is mindfulness. How come the artworks work so well? It is because when you're doing art, when you're interacting with the installations, as mentioned just now, the participant is living in the moment. And this is exactly mindfulness. It is a very important principle of mindfulness. Why are we unhappy? Often it is because we worry about the future, what might happen in the future, or we are ruminating about the past. So in the end, we're not living in the moment. But in art, when we're engaged, it helps us in a number of ways. One, we engage in an activity which will help us recover, and at the same time, we feel that it is an activity and it is a community activity. I can reach out. And you wouldn't feel that this is therapy as such, but it works as therapy.
To us, your fun work with mind in the UK, promoting the mental well-being by the means of artwork. So, with respect to destigmatization, how is the achievement that you have so far have done? Yes, in the UK.
Okay, so that's a brilliant question. The government went all out on this over the last 5 years, millions and millions and millions of pounds into a public health campaign, all over bus stops, all over the TV stations. It's okay not to be okay. And actually what they did was they got major figures, pop stars, musicians, people look up to, and they had them speak out about their mental health and how they feel and what was going on. And I'm going to be slightly controversial. I think it might have gone too far. And it's almost a badge of honour to wear a diagnosis. So we're seeing kids who want to emulate their role models actually adopting things that might not be the case. I mean, there's a difference between being stressed and having a full-blown anxiety disorder. So I don't know, we might have overdone it, but the stigma's completely changed. The good news is the dial's shifted, and it's way better than it was when I was growing up. I'd never...
To the other extreme, you mean? You mean to the other...
I think it might have gone a bit too far. Yeah,
Mm.
but when I was a kid, I would never say I had an anxiety disorder or a panic attack. You know, I didn't even know what that was. I'd be ashamed to mention that to anybody. Certainly today, I wouldn't. So I think we've got there.
The problem, we are not at that stage yet. In Hong Kong, we still have the stigma problem, as our guest speaker have told.
Stigma is a huge problem.
Yes, it's a long battle. So going 翻返去廣東台先。
As you know, I've worked in the government on public policy. I just want to hear your views on that. That is, art is so effective as a tool in handling mental health or emotional health issues. I just want to ask you, in what areas are we doing well? In what areas do we need improvement? We need more work? So that art in the public forum can be more useful and can be applied more. Grace, you want to start? I think what is good is that for the hospital, the friends in the hospital are more and more aware about the importance of art. When the doctors give you medication to treat mental health, there are actually other options. Art is one option. It can really help the people. And also, I've had such an experience, and that is after a workshop, there was a nurse who came into the room where we did the workshop. And she was really surprised because we were talking about the workshop and we were sharing our own feelings. And all of a sudden she said, how come these few people could talk? Because when they came out for the medical consultation, they never spoke up. And I smiled at her and said, this is exactly it. This is the benefit of art. So when we're all working together and everybody knows that art can be helpful to us, to the patients, I think this is one thing. But on the policy level, perhaps for policy, perhaps we can include that into medical treatment, art as a form of medical treatment, or perhaps further than that, for art, especially in Hong Kong. Is it too idealistic? And that is to say, a lot of Hong Kong people say, artists are too far away, they are untouchable. But actually, art is all around us. So this is about raising awareness, whether it is the government or NGOs or anybody. If we can move along this to this objective, that would be great. Well, growing up in Hong Kong for so many years, I think art as something that is very lofty, unreachable, was a little bit of the past, but still it is still unreachable. It's difficult. There's a process to it. So Francis, in the public arena, how do you think we can apply this medium much better, art, so as to raise the efficacy of our work in mental health? Well, actually, there are some art funds which can be applied for, and so there is recognition of the role of art already. And every year we write a lot of funding applications, and the funders would ask, why are there so few services? Because still they're looking at quantity and not quality. They would ask why we want to hire an artist, but it is so expensive to hire him. This is all about mindset. I think there's a lot of work to do yet. As for my opinion, I would say I will give you 3 hearts. One is a heart of empathy, whether it is the policy formulators or for us who are in the front line of social work. We need to work together with art, walk together with art, because not everybody wants to use words to express oneself. And we want to find the right way to help the person express his or her own feelings. The second is a heart of creativity. Shall we talk is one example, and there are hybrid methods of achieving that end, and I think that should be continued. Overseas, whether it be workshops on mental health, etc., there are lots of self-help and online modes, and that's been happening for some time. And during this epidemic, with this new normal, perhaps we can have this creative heart to break through some of the framework.
The third point is very important, and that is inner heart. Whenever we talk about art work or mental health promotion, destigmatization, the work needs to be long-term. It cannot only last 1 to 2 years. In other countries, there is a long-term mental health policy. So for art and mental health promotion, you need to be patient before you can see some real effects. Stephanie, anything from you? If you have watched very attentively Mr. Wang Yanlong's video, I think we have to level up a bit. That is, I need to thank Jockey Club even though they are not paying me. However, there is so much funding for art and mental health. I think this is important. When you carry out research, if you want to publish paper about art therapy, then you may get a lot of qualitative data. So people always look at figures and data and KPIs. So I think we should not limit ourselves within this framework. We should be more open-minded. Well, not only KPIs and data can attract funding. Now with the Jockey Club funds, I hope that there can be more track record. And I hope that people can also apply for government's funding. Subjective experience is important, right? If the patients find something effective, then more should be done. I think they should listen to stakeholders' views more. The committee may be at the top and they have their own ideas, but they should try to listen to patients more.
Participants, 2 questions I would like to direct to Nimrod and Stuart. The first one is, most of these public art pieces are situated in cities, so they can have the most people experience them. But this doesn't reach people in towns or villages, and even people in city suburbs. What can we do to reach out more of our population? Stuart, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I mean, we actually did take the Happy Clouds around to a lot of underserved neighbourhoods on the back of a truck, which was brilliant. So you can do that. But ultimately, I think it's through the media. It's going to be media outreach, and it's going to be online. It has to be. It's ways that we can connect around things like social media, forums and support like that, I think. And also awareness raising is just going to be massive. It's just getting the message out that it's okay to talk about how we feel and reaching those rural areas with that communication somehow.
Actually, this connects to another question. Another participant asked, do either of you have any advice for incorporating interaction with art in social media? And she said, I also agree about the therapeutic values of art. I integrate the arts and things I've learned from my art therapy certification in my teaching. So how to incorporate art with social media? Stuart, do you have any
Oh,
wisdom
yes.
to share?
I do. It's called social media. It is social. It's a communication. It's a house party. So open up the platform. You know, if any of your friends aren't feeling good, you know, if you haven't heard from a friend for a while, just say, hey, how you doing, Dave? Are you all right? What's going on? Let's start the conversation. Let's use it to talk to one another. It's not hard.
I see. Nimrod, what about the case in your case? How do you do your outreach? Your pieces are quite big. Can you put it on at the back of the truck?
Yeah, yeah. No, we love doing work everywhere. It's not just in the inner cities. Some of the really nice work that we've done that's really effective is in rural countryside. You know, where the work actually becomes this otherworldly thing because the city is just so heavily almost polluted with light and interactivity that when you bring the work into a more rural landscape or environment, it actually even provides more I guess value in those spaces. That's why even the seesaw, the footage that we showed you earlier, you know, we put the seesaw on the beach of all places, and the way that can create new ways for people to experience even, you know, that environment is really fun. As far as social media is concerned, yeah, I mean, there's so much, I mean, even the platforms like Instagram where people are sharing on a visual level is really exciting, how people can communicate in more than just words, but in imagery, can be really creative and a really good outlet in some ways. Depends how you use it, but yeah.
Okay. 有兩條問題咧。
There are two questions for our local guests. First, for Francis. At the beginning, how can you enable some emotionally disturbed youths and adults take the first step to be exposed to drama? Because they may be very passive. Well, this question can also be put to Nimrod and Stuart. If people insist that they are not interested, then how can we ask them to use art as a tool? How can we use art as a tool to build relationship and communication with them? Francis, you go ahead first. Well, we need to encourage. If you ask us, we never force people. Forcing people to do something is not meaningful. Well, how come they are willing to perform on stage? Of course, there are many steps in between. People do not learn to act right away. At the beginning, they played. So one pretended to be Miss Hong Kong, one pretended to be Snow White, and so on. So they just first engaged in play as a warming up. And at first, they just had fun, and then later on, they could relax, and then they wanted to get into more contact with drama. So theater game, role play. So at the beginning, they acted as other people. Later on, they will act as themselves. They would act as themselves. So in the process, we need to encourage people. For example, social workers would do some briefing. So we make step-by-step attempts. This time, perhaps some people only take up some secondary roles. Later on, their role will become more important with more lines. Every time we perform in the Hong Kong APA, those are large stages. Many pop stars would like to perform on these stages, so they're attractive.
To people who don't like art, how do you do that before? Are there any people who insist they are not artistic or they don't like art, and how do you communicate or use your pieces to connect with them?
Is it a question for me? Sorry, I lost you.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. You don't. Absolutely never, ever, ever force anybody to do anything they don't want to do. Ever. Art is not the magic bullet for everybody. We have to accept that. But it's a very powerful thing for some people. So it's part of an overall menu of things that help people towards healing. And the right art form for the right person at the right time is what you want. So it might be drama. It might be painting. It might actually be nothing at all. It might be talk therapy. It might be time with a friend. So make it available. Don't push anybody to do anything. and gently encourage, and then it's their option. And that's the best you can hope for, I think.
Nimrod, what's your view on that?
I agree with Stuart. It's interesting actually how different cultures, when we bring these types of work to different cities around the world, it's interesting how different cultures, what they expect from the work. So if it's interactive, they expect people to interact with it. But in a way, for us, it's never been about that. I don't mind if someone is just there observing and getting something out of it, or interacting in a way that I never expected them to. And it always happens, people actually end up being quite creative as to how they approach things when you leave them to their own accord and don't necessarily put a prescribed way for them to interact with something or engage with something in a specific way. So yeah, I like to leave it quite open for them to explore and express themselves how they want to, versus any prescribed way of doing so.
時間差唔多啦，咁咧我就想問下。
It's about time. I would like to ask the 2 artists and our 3 guests. Perhaps you can do a quick conclusion. Grace, just a few words, please. After listening to the talk, one important point is art is powerful. It can embrace. There are things that it can do or cannot do, and there are things that people may or may not enjoy. Art in the medium of therapy is something useful. Francis, I think art must be closely intertwined with life. It should not leave the ground. And actually, we need to work together with our targets. Stephanie, public education is very important. Art, to ordinary people, seems to be something very high up. However, if we do more publicity, then it can be popularized, and we will all be happier. Publicity is very important. Right, shall we talk? We should talk more and do more. Thank you. Thank you.
Was to conclude.
Yes. Art is an easy and direct way to connect with happiness.
Thank you. And Nimrod?
I mean, art it's never played as big a role as it has now during this last year with what we're facing. And you can see how art, music, and dance and so on has really touched us in so many ways.
好啦，咁咧大家見到個窗。
Okay, you can see the color keeps changing in this window, so time flies. So it's time to end this panel discussion. We will take a 5-minute break. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our 3 local experts.
Australia for joining us. Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Nimrod. So in 5 minutes' time, we will go to the next session, and we have 2 more artists joining us, and 3 more guests. So I'll see you in a bit. 5分鐘休息嘅時間咧，好快就過去啦。咁咧，去到我哋第
So now we proceed with our second session. So we have two more artists from the US, LEWIN, and Hong Kong, Ryan Young. Now, I guess you have some memory about LEWIN because a few years ago, his pieces were exhibited during the Hong Kong Art Festival. And at that time, in Chater Park, there was a huge installation on the ground which will emit light at night. So before we start the second discussion, I will invite Jen and Ryan to go through or present their works from the perspective of mental health. So when the pieces interact with the audiences, what kind of effects will be generated?
Honored to be here for the talk. I believe strongly that the topic
So
of
this is,
community and mental health is important for us to think about and to talk about. I'm also excited to be bringing my sculpture Aqueous to Hong Kong as part of it. This has certainly been quite the year. In my own practice, and I believe in the practice of many artists out there, the pandemic has really forced all of us to relook at what really matters in our work. What's been particularly interesting for me is that even during the most difficult of times, I've been able to create and exhibit work worldwide. And in doing this, I've really been able to see how the work can potentially and positively affect community. While I may not have consciously focused on topics of mental health when creating all of my artwork, I've realized that there are deep core values of happiness, playfulness, joy, connection, and community that are really part of everything I create. And I believe that these values do help us to live a happier, healthy life. But to start, let's step back a bit and talk about how I got here and how my work began. I had the amazing experience of growing up raised in a very beautiful natural place on Maui in Hawaii. This is an example of the view I might have seen every day as a child, sunlight and clouds over Haleakala Crater. The sense and quality of light impacted me and became something I wanted to translate through all of my art. But there was more than just natural beauty. My family was also very focused on health and happiness. My mother was a choreographer, an artist, a dancer, and my father was a physician. This is an image from 1982 when I was in second grade of my father, Dr. Jack LEWIN. When I was a child, my parents held a formal conference called The Spirit of Mental Health that explored different methodologies as pathways to mental health. The focus was on learning how to be mentally present to discover what was fulfilling or what was fearful, and how to use these skills to create positive mental health patterns for life. With a father focused on health and well-being and a mother on dance and art, I'm sure you can imagine our family dinners were always lively discussions. We talked about art, music, medicine, healthcare, politics, health advocacy, policy, practice, and research. Later, when I started to make my own artwork, my artwork really merged together many of these different experiences and doctrines. And I think you can see that really well in this sculpture, which is one of my earliest works to date. It's called The Butterfly. This was a work that consisted of hand-painted silk, I hand-painted, woven electronics that I created. I created these large wings out of bent aluminum, and I created a large robotic sculpture you could dance with. As you moved towards or away the wings, they would dance with you. And in the center of the work was also an eye that showed a pixelated and watery Monet-esque version of your own form. And essentially, it was a giant robotic butterfly that could be your dance partner. And when looking into its center, you would see yourself. After seeing how this type of work could really engage participants, I immediately wanted to explore larger works that could be even more interactive. This is an example of a work I created soon after called The Moths. Here you can see participants below holding an orb that senses capacitance, and based on this reading, the moths above would be set to flight. These examples, the butterfly and the moths, while they're old works, I think that they really reflected some of these early ideas I started to play around with. What's really interesting about these two works is that they require participation. A viewer has to be part of the sculpture. The sculpture doesn't really come to life without them. It was also at the same time that I started to explore creating large, interactive, and participatory sound installations. My first series of works like this, dating back to the 90s, were a series of laser harps. And here you can see an earlier laser harp. What's great about this image is it truly depicts what was interesting to me about these works. Here's a young woman playing a laser. A laser harp is played by passing your hands through a beam of light and creating a tone. And around her is a crowd of people playing music with her and together. Seeing these works come to life and the connected and collaborative play that they inspired transformed my art practice. Seeing people light up as they realized that the art was responding to them sparked something in me. I recognized that it really made people feel like they were present in the moment. They exhibited a clear sense of joy, and they seemed to enjoy becoming part of something outside of themselves. Watching this, starting back in the 90s, I also discovered that to me, for the work to be successful, it really needed to do this. It needed to engage social connection. And I think you can see that really clearly in this image. One of my favorite pieces of public art that I believe also exemplifies many of these elements was a piece I created in 2015 to transform a portion of a typical city sidewalk. This is a piece in Minnesota called the Sidewalk Harp. And we'll watch a video of the work interacting with the public. This is an outdoor permanent work designed to transform what would have been a standard public sidewalk. Another one of my favorite new works is actually a series of harps that I've made across the US that I call magical harps. Magical harps are works I create for the Magical Bridge Foundation, which is a truly revolutionary accessible playground. This partnership is particularly special because it places my artwork in a space that allows individuals who may have higher barriers to social connection to actively create and play music with each other.
I think it's pretty cool. It made me want to dance. I mean, you know.
Here's another example of a magical harp in Colorado that was made possible for this child, Ashan. And he actually asked the Make-A-Wish Foundation for an accessible park with a magical harp that he could play in. We were very honored to be able to make this work. In all of these works, you see the integration of interactive light and sound. Music therapy is one of the most researched examples of art therapy, showing many benefits such as the promotion of wellness and the healthy aspects of lives, as well as reduced pain, anxiety, and other psychological and physiological symptoms. For me, integrating music and light, however, always just felt intuitively good. I myself felt joy and connection while playing with light and sound, and it made sense to me to share this feeling with others. However, in all of my work and in the history of my entire art process, I really truly learned the most about social connection, play, and joyfulness through my work at the pool. This is the pool. I conceived of the pool when I was 19 years old and I was camping in Western Australia. And at the time, I conceived of a pool of light that could be a watery light sculpture that allowed users to actually splash and play with light itself. It took me 20 years for me to turn this vision into reality. I had to wait for LED technology to advance to something that I, as an artist, could reasonably work with. In 2008, I created my first version of the work. Since its inception, the pool has really been to hundreds of exhibitions all over the world. I honestly never imagined how successful this work would end up being. In this video, I think you can see some of the joy and play captured on participants worldwide. What's honestly been the most amazing thing about this work, however, is that my team, as we take it to all of these what would seem like very different places, take Bahrain to London, Korea, Japan, Chattanooga, Florida, Hong Kong, Beijing. And everyone has really seemed almost the same. Everyone smiled, everyone's jumped in, and everyone has played in the same way. The pool has also expanded beyond just the work to allow for integration and education within the nearby community. Here I'm in Hong Kong many years ago teaching middle school children how to control and program the sculpture. In this case, access to the artwork is not just the artwork itself, but the code and the background technology in the work itself. And certainly the pool has permanent versions of itself around the world. Here's a mini pool that's part of an accessible play space in Singapore. An interesting story about the pool that a few know about is that many years after the pool was a huge success, I was commissioned by Google to create a pool application. The app, which ended up being built by the man who would eventually become my husband, was a highly sophisticated and amazing technological tool that allowed you to draw and play on the pool from a mobile device in real time. And you can see it here. While the app was actually very, very cool, I noticed that when we brought it to our exhibitions and we brought it with the sculpture, no one played on the sculpture. They all played with the app. And this actually really bothered me. I eventually chose to stop exhibiting the app. To me, the importance of creating an experience where participants physically engaged and played in the work was vastly more important than showcasing sophisticated technology. This is an interesting idea to sit with, and it underscores the nuanced way in which I incorporate technology into my work. I've sought to harness the power of technology within the work to create a platform that highlights and encourages physical interaction and group play. But that brings us to this year, 2020. How do we create collaborative group play, gathering, and joyful works in the middle of a pandemic? In the weeks immediately before the US and New York City, where I live, went into quarantine, I was actually in Tokyo installing my largest sculpture to date. This is a work that had taken almost 3 years to build and to plan. This is a video taken right in early March. The work is called Cosmos. It's 1,300 square meters, and it's a new traveling play sculpture. While we were installing it, we realized that the virus was certainly more serious than expected and that public health gathering worldwide needed to be reevaluated. My team and I actually left the work in Tokyo, and we left it assuming it would never open, which was devastating. However, interestingly, after many months while we were quarantining in New York, Tokyo actually decided to open the work. They had strict crowd control and social distancing. This was in July. This is the sculpture a few months ago. The exhibit in the end was a huge success. It allowed for a way for the community to gather and to play safely during the pandemic. This gave my team hope that we might be able to continue to make work like this, work that we so passionately believe in, work that could be exhibited during a pandemic and could be done so safely and responsibly. At the same time, I also started to build one of my largest new permanent works to date, which is called the Aurora. This is a new work that's going to be spanning the arrivals and departure floor, 2 floors of a new Terminal 1 at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. This is an exciting new work because it's in a really, really active public space, but it's going to engage users and participants in the airport in interactive dance and light. Here you can see a rendering of what the work will be. It's 10 meters tall and it's glass and steel. Under the work are a series of interactive lakes that you'll stand on. As you stand on the lakes, they'll light up underneath your feet. And above you, the Aurora is going to sense gesture tracking. So as you move and dance, you're going to be able to swoosh light up through 2 stories of the airport. You can actually see a video from just a few days ago of us hanging the metal substructure for the whole work. It was very exciting to see it go in. My team and I will be coming back, actually in the next few weeks, to attach the over 9,000 interactive LEDs that will make this work illuminate and be something that people can dance with. The interaction of the work will promote movement and dance. This is a test recently I did in my Brooklyn studio, and it's on its side, so you'll have to imagine what the work is like. But you'll see that I'm dancing with the work and my movements are creating these swooshes of light. What I love about this work is that while the piece is beautiful on its own, it shows the role I want technology to play in my work. I want to encourage people to use their bodies to become part of the artwork. And of course, this brings us to Aqueous, the work that I'm going to be bringing to Hong Kong. Like Cosmos and the Pool, we also just exhibited Aqueous in Oklahoma City. Here we can see some videos from an exhibition from a few weeks ago. Like all of my traveling work, Aqueous has traveled all over the world. Each installation of Aqueous is entirely unique and is created specifically for the site. The goal of Aqueous is to create a playful, interactive landscape of light. With COVID, I've certainly felt the impact of travel restrictions on my ability to be there to personally install, tune, and experience the work, something that's really, truly important to me. This exhibition will require that the work be installed remotely without my team. While this is very stressful for me, in truth, it has been wonderful to see that my art is still able to shine within this new world and can still bring moments of joy and connection. As Jeremiah Mathis David, the artistic director of the Oklahoma Contemporary, put it, to me, there's perhaps no better artwork built for the pandemic. It's installed outside, it's interactive, you can interact with it with your feet. It's huge, that there's plenty of space so people can enjoy and experience it. One of the best things, however, that can happen for me in an artwork actually just happened with Aqueous in Oklahoma City, and that's when the artwork can be used to create more art creating art. We just got this unbelievable video of a piece of choreography and a poem that was inspired by Aqueous. In this video, a local jazz and hip hop dance collective, Race, are creating an improvised performance called Expanse. And again, it was inspired by the sculpture itself. I think we should watch it. I'm excited and honored to have Aqueous here, and I hope it can bring joy, connection, and happiness as it did this year in Oklahoma. The current global health crisis has truly made me reflect on my own work, my own process, and has reminded me of what's important for me as an artist and for those that are experiencing my art. To summarize this, I would like to end, and I always do, with these two slides. This is an art piece I created many years ago. It was intended to be two rotating and articulating Carl's Jr. stars that you could touch, change, move, and animate or play with. I had imagined people in this very serious museum where they were displayed, moving them in somewhat silly ways and smiling about it and walking away. But this is what happened instead. This is what happens when you allow people to touch the art. People turn into the artwork and they become and create something of their own, and then they use it to connect with each other. While I'm certainly not an expert on mental health, I believe fundamentally that the actions of joy, play, and direct connection with others can help to create happiness. And as an artist, I plan to spend the rest of my career creating work that can facilitate this, to allow people to dance with light, to smile, to help to capture, even if brief, moments of joy. Thank you.
大家好啦，我係
All right, I'm Ryan. I'm Wyan. I represent Hong Kong, and I'm very happy to have this opportunity to meet up with the artists around the world and representing Hong Kong and talking to you about some of the projects that I've done. Well, I'm an architect by background, and in my leisure time in Hong Kong, as we're building the buildings, we find that there is so little space and we have to comply with building regulations in this very crowded space of Hong Kong, building all these tall buildings. And as I do that, I reflect the following, and that is, apart from building buildings in this system, is there something else that I can do? Can I hack the system and do some art in this urban area? Now, Hong Kong people, we're used to living in a crowded city, and Hong Kong is a place that is famous for its skyscrapers. And very often I feel that Hong Kong people are like some screws that have lots of ridges in our everyday life, going to work, coming Hong Kong people love going to work. They are always going to work, and in that process, it seems that we have forgotten our relationship with the urban city. And what is our relationship with Hong Kong as a city? As a multimedia, multi or cross-disciplinary creative person and an architect, I very often use the word hack. Hack is not a word that I invented, no. But hacking as a process is very often in existence in nature. Now, if you've been to the Hong Kong island, if you work in the Hong Kong island, and when I was studying in the Hong Kong University, very often we see these plants growing out from the stone walls because there are a lot of slopes in the island of Hong Kong, and where there are these man-made buildings which have to be built on these slopes, sometimes we have to shore up the slope with stone walls, and we have to create land and space for roads and for buildings like this one. And when we see plants growing on these retaining walls, these stone walls, I can feel the life in them, the energy in them. And this is totally unregulated. They are growing in crevices and in nooks and crannies that are totally unexpected. This is the force of nature. And human beings in front of the force of nature is very small and insignificant indeed. As an architect in Hong Kong, as a cross-disciplinary creative person, I would like to know how I can do something on this basis. So urban intervention is something I've been thinking about in my creation. I've been in art and in architecture for some time. Aesthetics is something that I don't think about a lot, but rather how we can help the society is what I think about.
咗牙，我哋
Hong Kong people very often seem to become a bit tired. We are always in a rush. We always rush to work. We are worried that we'll be late. And on Sunday, we may go to a restaurant to have a meal, or we need to queue up at restaurants. How can I create some community art that enable people to feel awakened so they can really reflect upon the actual appearance of the city? In 2013, together with a team of friends, they are all architects, we received a project. And that project is in Fortress Hill, a place on Oil Street. And now the Art Promotion Office has launched this place known as Oil. Fortress Hill is an old district. There are many residents living there. So actually, this place, this art space, used to be a government warehouse. Surrounding this warehouse, there are many new high-rise buildings. Well, if you go past the Eastern Corridor, you will see many new buildings near North Point at the waterfront. And this is a very historical building, but there are many residential buildings and office buildings or even luxury flats surrounding this historical building. And this is a very crowded district. And together with my team, we made a bench. It is very seldom that we can sit on a bench and look up to the sky in a crowded district. Here you can see this installation with a piece of grassland, and here you can see some wooden plates or bars. They used to be part of the structure of a warehouse. Now, people said to us that when they renovated this Oil Street structure, these wooden plates were disposed of, and we asked whether these wooden plates can be reused, and so we created this installation for people to sit on People can sit on there and take a rest. They can look up to the sky, and they can step onto the wooden boards. This is a rare opportunity because this is a very crowded district. And here is a space like a breathing gap for people. In 2013, I have a project in Kwun Tong. Back then, in 2013, Kwun Tong was converted from an industrial district into a commercial business district. So you can see that name as well on road signages. Now, Kwun Tong district has been developed gradually, and we can see the Kai Tak cruise terminal. And in Kwun Tong, there is a very famous road that is Kwun Tong Bypass, and underneath it there is a lot of space. The title of my presentation is Urban Hacking. In fact, this flyover is a valuable space. We have infrastructure which brings convenience and fast transport for people. It is a space created to facilitate people and vehicles. How can we make use and intervene with this space? At the beginning, from the fruit market, we picked up a lot of cardboards. Now, the fruit market in Hong Kong is very famous. Every day, early in the morning, many people work there. And after these cardboards are used, they will be disposed of. As architects and cross-media creators, we think of whether there is any chance or value of recycling these cardboards. So we cut them into smaller pieces and put them together into an installation where people can sit on. We think that this is a very big public space which can be shaped into a lot of things. We have created a proposal. So around this column of the flyover, we created this bamboo pavilion. At that time, the challenge was to comply with Highways Department rules and regulations. According to the Highways Department rules and regulations, any structure must not be very near to this structural column. You can see from this picture that the structure is very thick. So we decided to make a pavilion surrounding this structural column. We think this is a very successful urban intervention project. You all know that Kwun Tong is a very dense industrial and commercial and trade district. Many people commute there. There are a lot of people and vehicles. So we have created this space. So during lunchtime, people have the chance to take a breath, to relax. They don't need to face the emissions from the old industrial buildings. So I think this is a very successful urban intervention in terms of function as well as aesthetics value. Now, if you consider the commuters in Kwun Tong and those delivery men, they can have a breathing space here. All of a sudden, they will realize that Kwun Tong really looks nice. I'm not a mental health expert. However, we have witnessed the impact of the pandemic on many people. So here, they can enjoy the space, use the space. In 2015, at that time, in the news, there was much report about this Mong Kok pedestrianization zone. And there was a lot of noise coming out of the busking activities. And the noise affected people's mental health. So people wondered whether the pedestrianization zone should be minimized. And so at that time, we proposed that we can make use of this fountain in Kowloon Park. This fountain is very scenic. We can hear the sound of the water ejection, and it is very pleasant. And we have created this bamboo scaffolding or a pavilion. In Hong Kong, bamboo scaffolding is very well known, and we also make use of some safety net to create this structure. In the space, we created a temporary theater. In Hong Kong in 2013, people discussed a lot about pedestrianization and busking. Is busking helpful to people? Is busking enjoyable, or is busking creating noise? So there was much discussion in the community about that. At that time, we worked with a number of groups. For example, Fresh Wave. It comprises many young directors. We invited a number of directors to participate in this temporary theater. We said this is intervention because Kowloon Park is managed by LCSD of the government. And at that time, there was the architecture biennial. And so we could legally engage in busking in Kowloon Park. We invited some secondary students in their teens to do some street dance, and we invited some local bands to perform there. These could not be seen normally in Kowloon Park, and we think that this is a very successful urban intervention project. I still remember that in 2015, what was most famous in Hong Kong at that time, it was 0 degrees in winter at that time, but people still watched films there while withstanding the cold. And then in 2018, I received a very good invitation, giving me a good chance to get engaged in this art project in Central. Now, on Monday to Friday, this road is full of vehicles and people. It is always congested. And for this flyover, it is important to Hong Kong. For those who live on the islands, they need to walk on this footbridge to the ferry pier, to the outlying islands. So I'm not the first person intervening in that space. Actually, Central has been turned into a Formula E racing ground. So at this space, I created a swing project. It is not a fancy project. I just used this roundabout on the road. Very few vehicles went past this roundabout, and not many people used it. So as a cross-media creator, could I temporarily use this space to change people's mindset? So can people look down onto this roundabout from the flyover or from the footbridge? This is a very important footbridge. If you take ferry to the outlying islands, you definitely have to take this route. So people on the footbridge will look outside and appreciate the scenery. But very often people do not have the time to appreciate the scenery. But then this project enables people to rethink, oh, there can be a swing in Central, and there can be a space for people to stop by in Central. When you play on the swing, there is time for you to look up into the sky. And Central is a very dense and expensive commercial district. So when do we really have a chance to pause and look at the sky in Central? Well, we witness commuters in Central. They will come deliberately to play on the swing when they are off duty. So we are talking about a very scenic but expensive prime location, Central. And when can they have this opportunity to play on a swing in Central? I think this is a game in which they can have their stress released from their very busy work schedule. I'm honored to be invited by the Art Center, and I will build this swing project again. This time, I will add sound and interactive lighting effects to it. When participants play on the swing, Then when the swing moves, there will be different sounds. And when so many swings move together, the sound will be like a symphony orchestra. So I really look forward to this very intervening art installation. That's all from me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen 同埋Ran 同
Thank you, Jen and Ryan, for their presentations. After their presentations, then we'll move on to our last session for today, and that is the second panel discussion.
welcome Jen from New York. We understand you are now very early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. So very happy we have you joining us for the next section for the discussion. So thank you, Jen. Ryan 咧就喺現場，同埋我哋另外兩
Ryan is here together with our two other guests. Let me introduce our two guests. They are expressive arts therapists, intermodal IDEC, manager of New Life Building Sheltered Workshop, New Life Psychiatric Rehabilitation Association, Carmen Au. The second one is Associate Dean, Postgraduate Education of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor of the Department of Social Work and Social Administration, Director of the Center on Behavioral Health and the Master of Expressive Arts Therapy Program, the University of Hong Kong, Professor Rainbow Ho. She is here. And the third guest is with us on Zoom, Associate Professor of Practice in Social Work of the Department of Social Work, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, Professor Timothy Leung. Hello. Before we start, let me invite our three guests, Carmen, Rainbow, and Timothy, to comment on the art pieces of Jen and Ryan, especially from the mental health perspective. Carmen, can you start first? Yes, greetings. I'm Carmen from New Life. Just now I heard the two artists' presentation about Jen's and Ryan's artwork. I'm happy to share my views. On Jen's artwork, the color, the light, the interaction are all very nice. And we can also play together on the swing. For the artwork, to help mental health being, I think the element of play is important. How can we feel happy? Now, through play, people will feel happy. So if you look at Jen's art creations, there is interactive light. You can move your body, and when you play on the swing, there is immediate body experience, and there are different colors and sounds, and there is cooperation among many people. Many people can play together. Many people will create some effects together. So participants and those around them will have a sense of happiness. I think this will help in terms of the mental well-being. Rainbow, what do you think of the two artworks? I think that Jen's and Ryan's artwork are very interesting to me. We are talking about a very common place, and they turn very common places into places with a lot of joy and excitement. And the places become very fascinating and amazing. People in cities are always in a rush. Very often we pass by places, but we will not pay attention to anything there. But when the art pieces are placed there, then very often, as Ryan said, normally you do not pay attention. However, when there is an artwork, you will stay and you will try to contact and interact with the art piece. And all of a sudden, the space becomes very amazing. It is like entering into a whole new horizon or world. So I think it delivers something very interesting to people's life. We always say that art is interesting because it can turn common things into very unusual things. So this is the essence of art, and the two artists have delivered this effect well. When art enters community, then people can appreciate the uniqueness, the unique characteristic and nature of art. Timothy? Timothy, please start. Okay. I would like to conclude with a few words. First of all, for Jan's artwork, I want to give 3 English words: aesthetic. Now, this root word of aesthetic means beauty, and at the same time, it means going back to the 5 senses. And in modern art, we want to enable people to make use of their sensory organs to experience directly. And for the interactive dance and pool, people can enjoy an aesthetic experience. This is important to mental health because many mental patients encounter stress and anxiety in life, and so they will resort to a lot of defense mechanisms. And they may have some painful experience in life. They will try to dissociate themselves from these painful experiences.
And through the stimulation of the sensory, they can reconnect with their environment and with their senses. And that in itself is therapeutic. So that's aesthetic. In the 2 works, Ryan had built this into it, not only about beauty, but also to stimulate the sensory side. And another word is connection, I would say. Connection. How can people connect with people? Create a public space, a bench to connect up with the sky, the swing with the space to have people connect up with the environment. This connection is very important, and the 2 works both provide that connection, allowing people to connect with each other. And while people connect, people will feel a sense of well-being. In mental health, there is one point, and that is people feel alienated, lonely. And when there is connection, there is more well-being. A 3rd word I would like to use is embodiment. In mental health, when people think about the issues, they have a lot of thinking, and they cannot stop thinking. And to go back to the body, to the physiological, to have the physiological connect up with the person, that is helpful. So the 2 works both allow people to experience their own bodies. So this is about ACE. ACE reflects the interaction characteristic of the 2 works. And this is exactly promoting the Hong Kong people in particular, and people under pressure. As somebody said, it's like a screw having lost the ridges. How can one recover the senses? How can one feel the unusual in the usual? Now, in the previous session, I had not brought up this particular question, but I will bring it up now, and that is those participating in this webinar. Perhaps can Rainbow talk about this first, and then Timothy? And that is, in our discussion, it's been mentioned time and again that art is beneficial to mental health and mental well-being, and it's therapeutic. So in science, is there any evidence to support this? And that is participating in creative process or in the arts, does it really make people happier scientifically? Now, when we had the pre-meeting, I discussed this with Rainbow, and it was very interesting what Rainbow had to share. Rainbow? Well, actually, in recent years, for neuroscience research, there had been different groups which have done research into exactly that. And there's been a couple of interesting outcomes. First of all, in engaging in art, it stimulates different parts of our brain, multisensory stimulation. And this allows people to, especially where the neural functions are impaired. For example, there is not a lot of synergistic interaction. Then through art, because of its multisensory stimulation, whether it's be visual, tactile, audio, with that kind of stimulation, it's like a symphony. It has an order with that stimulation. It's very coherent. And this actually helps people. It helps with the signals within the brain and also the neural pathways of the brain. So this helps with emotions and mental well-being. That's the first thing. And the other area is my area of study. My study is on endocrine system and the neural system and its reaction to stress. And we do have data to show that where art is engaged, it actually affects some psychological indices. For example, the stress hormones and also our reaction to stress. So there are real scientific data to support this. So art is shown to not only give us a very good stimulation in terms of the sensory aspects, but at the same time, for our neurology, it also helps as well. Timothy, anything to supplement? For artwork, I would say, because it affects and allows our left and right brain to work together, then that is good. And also, there are a lot of things in life which are difficult through symbols and through creation and art. This kind of difficulties or calamities, grievances, sadness, feelings that cannot be readily expressed are expressed through art. Not directly expressed, but through a channel. There can be interaction and also with handling of the emotions through this channel, through art. For example, where there is a traumatized person, the person can talk about the trauma, but alternatively, the person can do a sculpture, for example, with papier-mâché, or do a painting or a drawing. Then he or she will be able to express his or her trauma through symbols in an abstract way. And by so, there is expression. Because it is a symbol, it is not a direct contact with the trauma itself, so the person will not be overcome by emotions. There is a safe distance where the person can actually elevate this to heal the trauma. All right. Carmen, in the sheltered workshop, she told me that in that environment, there are some persons suffering from severe emotional problems or mental health issues, but they very proactively want to participate in art. So, Carmen, how can this process of art engagement help this group of friends? In the sheltered workshop at New Life, starting from 2005, we've been using art media to help the persons concerned. And all the more, we are integrating art and media to not only help them recover, but to have them attain a mental health, a mental well-being, or a wellness in their life. So in the different levels of our service, in professional service, in the live-in service, and etc., we put in the art element. And they can come back, for instance, to New Life, to our workshop, to do art, so as to stabilize their emotions and to develop some skills and even produce some products which can be sellable in the market and get some income, and also to be praised. And also, whether it is visual art or dance or body movement or puppet or whatever media, it is to build up an interest for them, and this interest gives them a sense of well-being and something that they can engage in. And also even in food, for example, in the way they eat, their diet. For example, some people would not eat a certain kind of fruit, but by drawing or that fruit, the person is learning and extending their life experience. They're willing to venture out. And then there are small group facilitation. It's really difficult for me to describe it all. For example, some people are dealing with certain grief or sadness, and through storytelling, we are able to, through that interaction, to build for them a kind of communication opportunity. Or even for puppet shows, Timothy had talked about art providing a safe space. For puppet art, for example, for a lot of everyday life difficulties or some of the dashed hopes or the existing hopes and grievance, for example, through puppets, they can express those emotions. I remember well, there was one situation where an old lady had made a bride puppet because she said she wanted to be married. She wanted to have a family, but she never had that chance. And she made that puppet so that she can realize that, to be a bride. And so we also make some puppet shows or short videos. And this old lady was very insistent that we include this bride story into the video. And in that video, she got married, and it was therapeutic for her. And through our organization, we want to use different media through art to help these persons for their recovery needs. Thank you, Carmen.
First one, the same question to both artists. First one to Jen. So you mentioned about your work, the interaction between your work and the audience. Your audience not only watch your appreciate or observe your work, they actually participate in your work, and you mentioned they have become part of the what you create. So when you observe them and see how they communicate or react with your art piece, do you think what you observe, is this something you can imagine or within your expectation, or any occasion that their reaction go beyond your imagination?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the most important part about the work is always I imagine something and I can make a guess, but I never really know until I see it in public and I see people playing with it, and I'm always surprised. I actually just had the experience of installing a piece in Hawaii in a school, in a K through 12 school. And I watched, this was just last week, all of these kids, it's a sound and light piece, dancing underneath it. You didn't have to touch it, you could move. And to see the kids and like the dance moves, they were jumping and their legs were in the air and they were twirling around. And it wasn't obviously what I had expected, but it was really amazing to watch that. And so for me, I learn something new each time. I learn more about the work. I learn more about how people will participate in it. And I take pieces of that observation and I put that into the next work as well. So for me, that's the life cycle of the work, which is to make what I think will happen, watch it, observe it, and then adapt and create new work from that. So I can keep.
How do you read their reaction? How do you read their reactions? How do you? I mean,
I just watch. I watch, and because from the practice of being an artist, to me is there's an intuition to being an artist, and I can only make art that I believe in, that comes from me, that feels connected and honest to me, and so I watch and I pay very close attention, and then that goes into my next inspirations. Yeah, so I mean, and that's really sort of the joy of making work for me. It's about making work that has this feeling that I think inspires a feeling that I can observe, and I'm going to be doing that for the rest of my life. But it really is kind of more of an intuitive process of me looking and seeing what seems to make people feel joyful, what sounds seem to, I mean, I think Rainbow said something really interesting about slowing people down. For example, in this piece in Iolani, it's in a playground, and so kids move very fast. But I designed the interaction so that the interaction is actually much more interesting if you slow down. And I watched the kids get that. So they were running around and jerking their hands around really quickly, and then they got it, and then they started to slow down and use their bodies more fluidly and more consciously. So that told me that that worked. So it's really just, for me, it's experimentation and watching, observing, and then adapting into my new work.
So you actually read you can tell the messages when your participants are actually playing with your art piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think my background as a trained dancer, I watch how people move, I watch their faces very closely, I watch how they behave, and then I create work in response to that. I mean, that's really sort of very much what I'm looking for. And
it's like dancing. It's like dancing with your work.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm a choreographer. I'm very, I'm closely paying attention to how the public is moving and participating, and then I'm adapting the piece to balance that into the future.
I see. So, Ryan, 同一個問題想問你做
Same question for you, Ryan. In your creative process and with your different works, I see that you emphasize a lot the interaction with the public, and their reaction may or may not be the same as what you have expected, or is it? Well, actually, in my training as an architect, we often discuss for a city, should it be planned or should it not be so planned? For the projects that I have for city planning or architecture, some of the most successful items were actually not pre-planned, not much. For example, Lan Kwai Fong or in Mong Kok, the sports shoe street, they were not really pre-planned. And in my work, I also want to bring that element into it. I would want to lower the level of planning. In aesthetics, very often we say that we want to leave some empty space. And in my work, I also leave some empty space to allow the audience to fill that up as they wish. So what I create is a hardware. What I create is something that will allow people to jump out of their own framework and into that empty space so that they can fill it in my work. And that's always been the principle of my creative work. And the next question is for the three local guests of ours. Just now, we heard that for anybody, whether it is a person grappling with mental health issues or a so-called normal person, to have interaction with a piece of artwork, I would say that it is something that's very democratic, very equitable. So whether you are a so-called healthy person or a person grappling with mental wellness, you're not different. You're all the same. And I find that very interesting. And this is my own observation. That's the first point. Secondly, I would like to hear from you, and that is, the artwork itself, yes, there is interaction with the audience, but at the same time, we also see that for someone with emotional or mental health issues versus a normal person, when they're participating in that process, their interaction among each other, between each other, also creates value and function. Do you see that? So art as a medium for communication, do you find that aspect useful? Timothy? Art as communication, as medium, or as a social advocacy is a very pertinent concept. Now, my students had a project, and they would invite secondary school students to interview young people with drug addiction problems. And sometimes getting off addiction is an issue. Perhaps the person actually suffers from certain mental illness. And they would, after the interview, write up 100 words piece and also bring up scraps to create an artwork. And then they would mount an exhibition in a plaza, let's say in Stanley Plaza. Now, there are a few things there. First of all, the secondary students interacting or interviewing with the young drug addicts, there's this dialogue, and through that dialogue, there is understanding and being understood, and that is support for the addict or the mentally ill. And they also, that is the addict or the mentally ill, they also feel that they're breaking out of that loneliness. And in one installation, there was a chair with only 3 legs. And then there was this penguin in another work, which was standing aside. And these are not really the addict's own creations. It is a secondary school student's creation. After that interview, that dialogue with the addict, perhaps the addict had been suffering from something that's really painful, and there was dissociation. But at the same time, there was dialogue and communication with that secondary school student. And as social worker or in the university where I work, we need a lot of collaboration, because what is important is not just therapy, but rather through artistic creation, it in itself is connection and communication.
Can we create a space for conversation, for dialogue, so that people can pause for a while to think of what is normal, what is abnormal, what is good, what is bad, what is problematic, what is not problematic, what is marginal, what is mainstream? One important function of art is to enable people to think about these basic concepts: beautiful or ugly, right or wrong, mental health or mental or lack of mental health. People can have some more reflections. Thank you. Rainbow. Different people participate in an art activity at the same time. Do you think the value and effect of communication is very big? Well, you may say that it is very powerful. The first point I like from what you said is that in front of art, everybody is equal. At the same time, in front of art, everybody is unique. This is very special in the space of art. We have once organized a project. We invited those severely mentally ill to make some drawings. And with their consent, we exhibited those drawings. And those exhibitions took place in public places like MTR stations and shopping malls. We hope that those people who view the exhibition can give some response. So they will write their comments or response on memo pads, or they can also draw on memo pads as response. Well, that was a few years ago, and back then there were some news about severely mentally ill people attacking people with knives in the community. As a result, people have a lot of fear against those mentally ill, and they don't really understand. So we hope that art can enable people to have more understanding of the mentally ill so that people can have more empathy. And we would like to minimize stigma. So that's why this project. So in this project, members of the public can make response. We also organized workshop. We invited people to respond to the artwork using art, and the effect was very good. Many members of the public left comments. They said that through the art pieces, they were able to understand that, first of all, the mentally ill people are not that scary. At the same time, there are some unique qualities that are worth appreciation. In the study, we gathered some statistics and data. So empathy has improved and stigma is also reduced. So this project has told us that in the area of art, no matter whether we are talking about the mentally ill or the healthy people, we can have some communication in this area, and this is very beautiful. Carmen, what about your experience? Very often you ask your people to use verbal means to communicate with outsiders. Even that will be difficult. So if we make use of the medium of creation, will that be more effective? Yes. Through artistic creation, some time ago, we organized a project. So the mentally ill people can create art piece based on their sufferings, their pain, and their grievances, so that other people can experience the grievance through the art. So people will understand the impact, the real impact, and how deep it is, and that the feeling is very personalized. When people can't express themselves, well, color can help them express their emotions. There is an artist who is an autistic patient. He's not able to express his emotions, but he can use colors. For example, to him, green is a very serene color. So in most of his pieces, there is green. And yellow and orange means happiness to him. So there are these colors. And orange means unhappiness. When he is angry, he said that there is no color, because when he is angry, he cannot create anything. So art can stabilize his emotion, and through artwork, he can communicate more with others. Now, his artwork has a lot of unique characteristics. In 2012 and 2018, we organized mini exhibitions for him. He also took part in some art contests and exhibitions. But we found it difficult to build self-confidence for him. But through these creations, he could have communication with members of society, and it can improve his relationship with family members. So it's difficult to articulate the functions of art, but art really helps those people. Yes, I find this interesting. Ryan and I graduated in the same secondary school. And in our school, I think our people always like to create or stir up things. And he referred to urban hacking as his objective in creation. So one participant has a question for you. He referred to your swing design. So he said that this swing design can really enter the community in, for example, playground and so on. So he said that this will be well liked by many people. Are you confident that this can happen in Hong Kong? I know that you understand what I am asking. Well, in the Central project last time, the DO, the District Officer of Central and Western District, visited it, and he asked whether there is the chance for it to be displayed along the waterfront. Now, the government would like to revive the waterfront. The Victoria Harbour is very scenic in Hong Kong. You asked me whether there is this chance. Looking at my past projects, when it comes to hacking means something outside the system. So can I hack successfully so that it will become permanent architecture? It will be difficult at this time. Last time, I created the swing at the roundabout in Central, and I received many comments from government departments. Some government departments said that I blocked the street. In Hong Kong, there are laws and regulations. Everybody is a stakeholder. Everybody will give comments. As a creator, I hope to have the chance to find a permanent place in Hong Kong for me to install that swing. I see.
To the artists as well, and also to our panelists. Does the therapeutic factor of art get reduced somewhat when it is only viewed in the context of success or in the context of competition? So I wish to explain a bit, because in Hong Kong, when we talk about art, we also praise the people who get like big awards, or who can be some art piece to be sold in a very high price, or getting some, or winning any kind of like a competition. So so this is because why I'm asking in English, because I want Jen to answer this question first. Is the therapeutic of the art piece will be somehow reduced if we only focus on how successful an art piece is?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it depends on the intent of the art and the intent of the artist. And I think, you know, in this case, you're speaking to two artists that are interested in play and in transforming urban landscape. I don't necessarily think that, I mean, yes, certainly if the artist and the art organization has a different metric for success, like if they're looking for an art piece that is going to blow up all over Instagram, that's not necessarily going to affect positively the therapeutic value of the artwork. But I think that, you know, if you're looking at artists whose true intent is to sort of bring joy and to really transform public space, then for them and for the community supporting them, that is the success of the work. Certainly. For me, I know that's what I you know, an art piece is not successful if it does that. Even if it gets great media coverage, it's not successful unless it really has that feeling of joy and connection. And I can see that within the community that the work is in.
好啊。另外3位咧，或者4位咧，加埋啦，你哋覺得即係藝術一個，如果我哋要發揮佢嘅治療功能，
If art is to deliver the best therapeutic function, well, what is the best way to use it? Well, please feel free to give your comments. Timothy, perhaps you go first. Regarding therapeutic value or aesthetic value, I think this is not mutually exclusive, these two things. Sometimes it is about the discovery of beauty, and also therapeutic function, that these two can coexist. So sometimes when we look at an artwork, it can be aesthetic at the same time when it delivers therapeutic value. Okay, Rainbow. I agree with Timothy. The reason why we are in art therapy, because in the art creation process, we have an aesthetic experience, and this is definitely important in the therapeutic process. Now, when it comes to art therapy, we attach more importance to the process. Well, there's bound to be a product coming out of the process. And in the interim process, through discovery, through creation, and through getting sense of satisfaction and sense of aesthetics, well, of course, we're talking about appreciation. So that's how there can be therapy arising from the process. So from my point of view, the process and the artwork itself, both are important. Carmen, I agree with the two of them. Regarding art therapy, we attach importance to the process. So perhaps it is a different experience, helping us to find new self-resources or a new perspective to look at the same thing. So the therapy is not delivered by the therapist. It is actually the case that we ourselves are helping ourselves in a therapy. And through different art transformation and different art creation experience, we can help different needy people to find the right media to help themselves. This is a good experience. If you talk about the therapeutic function and the way how we can help mental well-being, we will talk about how art can bring something to life. That is, in our organization, we talk about 330 small break. So sometimes we just spend like 3 minutes, 30 seconds, just a short time to enhance our mental well-being. You can choose artistic activities, for example, listening to songs or make some artistic drawings. Through doing that, you will find or discover your connection with yourself. And then this can happen during art therapy, and it can also penetrate into your life so that you will pay more attention to your mental health. Art is a very good medium, so it's easy for people to participate, and it can be also a long-term, sustainable way of development.
Fine. So both in Hong Kong and New York, we are now, everyone in the world, I would say, undergoing the huge impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it is a time when, a lot of things is happening, and I'm sure everything that's happening around you is actually influencing you on your next work. So can you tell me, can you briefly assess how's the mental well-being status both in Hong Kong and also in New York respectively, and how do you, if possible, in your next work, respond to this mental status of the people in your city? So this time I wish to have Ryan to answer first, then we have Jen. Ryan.
OK，我諗喺
Okay, under COVID-19, we are now keeping social distance. When I created the swing, well, the swing project is sort of a dangerous activity. And in my creation, there is a safe distance so that people can play with this installation very happily and with a peace of mind. Under COVID-19, the swing is even more suitable in our time because within a very safe area, well, the center point, well, everybody is facing the same center point of the swing. Under COVID-19, we always stay home, we work from home, and we go for staycation. It seems that we have not met our friends for a long time. And it has been a long time that we haven't seen other faces. And during this time, I think the swing is a very suitable project. We sit on the swing very happily, and we can see those opposite us, and they are also playing happily. One important element of mental health is the person-to-person influence, and that is connection. When we see others who are happy, we will also be impacted, and we will also feel some pleasure. So I hope that in the future, in my art creation, I will focus more on the meeting between people. So apart from those cool, stylish art pieces, We hope to see each other more and we can talk and say hi to one another. That is one very important insight to me. Jan, what about you?
Yeah, I completely similar to the swings being able to be sort of by nature at distance. I found with my work, there's such a desire here in New York for people to connect and play with each other. I mean, everyone feels very cooped up. Everyone really, really wants some sort of experience. And luckily, most of my work is large enough and it's outdoors that it can be installed in a way where nothing is touched. You're either standing on it or dancing with it without touching anything, and it can be at distance. So in the few cases where we've had installations over COVID, they've just been wildly successful because everyone is so longing to have that kind of experience outside. Even if you're 10 feet, 20 feet away from someone, just to see someone smiling near you is really meaningful, as well as to have something playful to do outdoors that's safe and something that can be done. So for me, we've been working really hard as a studio to take the work, place it in places where it can be outdoors and safe, and finding ways that I can continue to build work during these times.
Thank you, Jen. 時間咧都好快。
Thank you, Jan. It's almost 8, so it's about time that we conclude the second session and today's discussion. Finally, I would like to invite all participants of this forum to scan this QR code. Then you will see a questionnaire. So later on, you will see the QR code on the screen. I hope that you can give us some feedback. So about art therapy, mental health, if you have some comments, please give us your feedback, and also give feedback to the Art Center so that we can do more work in the future. Now I would like to thank everyone, especially those artists overseas. I think the world is more and more global. So they are in different time zones and different countries, but we are all here together, taking part in the discussion. No one will negate the point that in promoting mental health and emotional health, art can play a very clear role and function. So in the near future, I hope that there will be more events of this type. So through the art medium, we hope more people will be happy in Hong Kong and more needy people can get help.
And also to the artists who join us from different corner of the world. So we hope everybody stays safe, healthy, and happy. This is what this webinar is about. So see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.